failed to provide a status of forces agreement and leave sufficient troops in there. We are back at war. The president just ordered more troops on the ground. We are back at war in Iraq. And Scott Zubowski, whose mom would always come to Memorial Day events in Newcastle, Indiana to see me, and I'd always give her a hug and tell her we're never going to forget our son, and we never will. Scott Zubowski and the sacrifices the American soldier made were squandered in Iraq because this administration created a vacuum in which ISIS was able to grow. And a reference to the Iranian deal that Hillary Clinton initiated, $150 billion
stopping
to the radical mullahs
program
in
without
Iran.
firing a shot?
You didn't stop the nuclear weapons program.
Yes,
we
did. Even the Israeli military says it stopped.
guaranteed that Iran will someday become a nuclear power because there's no limitations once the period of time of the treaty comes off.
Governor Pence, Mr. Trump has proposed extreme vetting of immigrants from parts of the world that export terrorism, but that does not address many of the recent terrorist attacks in the United States, such as the Orlando nightclub massacre and the recent bombings in New York and New Jersey. Those were homegrown, committed by U.S. citizens and legal residents. What specific tools would you use to prevent those kinds of attacks?
Well, I think it's a great question, Elaine. But it really does begin with us reforming our immigration system and putting the interests, particularly the safety and security of the American people first. I mean, Donald Trump has called for extreme vetting for people coming in to this country so that we don't bring people into the United States who are hostile to our Bill of Rights freedoms, who are hostile to the American way of life. But also, Donald Trump and I are committed to suspending the Syrian refugee program and programs in immigration from areas of the world that have been compromised by terrorism. Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine want to increase the Syrian refugee program by 500.
Elaine, I want to tell you about our plan.
Homegrown.
Yeah.
And so, but first, let's make sure we're putting the safety and security of the American people first, instead of Hillary Clinton expanding the Syrian
or
refugee
instead of
program.
you violating the Constitution by blocking people based on their national origin rather than whether they're dangerous.
That's absolutely false.
That's what the Seventh Circuit decided. Here's the difference.
The Seventh Circuit.
We have different views on refugee issues and on immigration. Hillary and I want to do enforcement based on, are people dangerous? These guys say all Mexicans are bad. And with respect to refugees, we want to keep people out if they're dangerous. Donald Trump said keep them out if they're Muslim. Mike Pence put a program in place to keep them out if they're from Syria. And yesterday, an appellate court with 3 Republican judges struck down the Pence plan and said it was discriminatory.
And those judges,
we should focus upon danger, not upon discrimination.
Elaine, to your point, those judges said it was because there wasn't any evidence yet that ISIS had infiltrated the United States. Well, Germany just arrested 3 Syrian refugees.
Well, I know
connected
this
to ISIS.
But they told you there's a right way and a wrong way to do it.
But look, if you're going to be critical of me on that, that's fair game. I will tell you, after 2 Syrian refugees were involved in the attack in Paris that is called Paris's 9/11, as governor of the state of Indiana, I have no higher priority than the safety and security of the people of my state.
But Governor
so you
Pence,
bet I suspended that program.
But Governor Pence,
and I stand by that decision. And if I'm Vice President of the United States or Donald Trump is president, we're going to put the safety and security of the American people first.
Can we just be clear? Hillary and I will do immigration enforcement and we'll vet refugees based on whether they're dangerous or not. We won't do it based on discriminating against you from the country you come from or the religion that you practice.
But the problem with that
is completely antithetical to the Jeffersonian values of equality.
Elaine, the director of the FBI or Homeland Security said, we can't know for certain who these people are coming from Syria.
Yes, we can. And when we don't let them know, we don't let them in.
So the
when
FBI,
we don't know who they are, we don't let them in.
The FBI and Homeland Security said, we can't know for certain. You've got to err on the side of the safety and security of the American people, Senator. I understand
by trashing all Syrians or trashing all Muslims.
Senator Kaine, let me ask you this. Secretary Clinton has talked about an intelligence surge.
Yes.
What exactly would an intelligence surge look like, and how would that help identify terrorists with no operational connection to a foreign terrorist organization?
Intelligence surge is 2 things, Elaine. It's 2 things. It's first, dramatically expanding our intelligence intelligence capacities by hiring great professionals, but also we've got some of the best intel and cyber employees in the world right here in the United States working for many of our private sector companies. So it involves increase on our own workforce, but striking great partnerships with some of our cyber and intel experts in the private sector so that we can, consistent with constitutional principles, gather more intelligence. But the second piece of this is really, really important. It also means creating stronger alliances, because you gather intelligence and then you share your intelligence back and forth with allies. And that's how you find out who may be trying to recruit, who may be trying to come from one country to the next. Alliances are critical. That's why Donald Trump's claim that he wants to, that NATO is obsolete and that we need to get rid of NATO is so dangerous.
That's not his plan.
Well, he said NATO is obsolete. And look, if you push aside your alliances, who are you going to share intelligence with? Hillary Clinton is a Secretary of State who knows how to build alliances. She built the sanctions regime around the world that stopped the Iranian nuclear weapons program, and that's what an intelligence means. Better skill and capacity, but also better alliances.
All right, I'd like to turn now to the tragedy in Syria.
Can I speak about the cybersecurity surge at all?
You can have 30 seconds, Governor, quickly, please.
First, Donald Trump just spoke about this issue this week. We have got to bring together the best resources of this country to understand that cyber warfare is the new warfare of the asymmetrical enemies that we face in this country. And I look forward, if I'm privileged to be in this role, of working with you in the Senate to make sure that we resource that effort.
We will work together in whatever roles we inhabit.
We have an intelligence serve. But I will also tell you that it's important in this moment to remember that Hillary Clinton had a private server in her home that had classified information on it about drone strikes. Emails from the President of the United States of America were on there. Her private server was subject to being hacked by foreign powers.
I'd like to ask you about Syria.
We could put cybersecurity first if we just make sure the next Secretary of State doesn't have a private server.
A full investigation concluded that not one reasonable prosecutor would take any additional step. You don't get to decide the rights and wrongs of this. We have a justice system that does that. And a Republican FBI director did an investigation and concluded.
All right, we are moving on now.
Senator, if your son or my son handled classified information the way Hillary Clinton did, they'd be court-martialed.
That is absolutely false, and you know that.
Absolutely
and you know
true.
That, Governor.
It's absolutely true.
Because the FBI did an investigation.
Gentlemen.
And they concluded that there was no reasonable prosecutor who would take it further.
Senator Kaine, Governor Pence, please.
Syria.
I want to turn now to Syria. 250,000 people, 100,000 of them children, are under siege in Aleppo, Syria. Bunker buster bombs, cluster munitions, and incendiary weapons are being dropped on them by Russian and Syrian militaries. Does the U.S. have a responsibility to protect civilians and prevent mass casualties on this scale? Governor Pence.
The United States of America needs to begin to exercise strong leadership to protect the vulnerable citizens and over 100,000 children in Aleppo. Hillary Clinton's top priority when she became Secretary of State was the Russian reset. The Russian reset. After the Russian reset, the Russians invaded Ukraine and took over Crimea. And the small and bullying leader of Russia is now dictating terms to the United States to the point where all the United States of America, the greatest nation on earth, just withdraws from talks about a ceasefire while Vladimir Putin puts a missile defense system in Syria, while he marshals the forces and begins. Look, we have got to begin to lean into this with strong, broad-shouldered American leadership. It begins by rebuilding our military. And the Russians and the Chinese have been making enormous investments in the military. We have the smallest Navy since 1916. We have the lowest number of troops since the end of the Second World War. We've got to work with the Congress and Donald Trump will to rebuild our military and project American strength in the world. But about Aleppo and about Syria, I truly do believe that what America ought to do right now is to immediately establish safe zones so that families and vulnerable families with children can move out of those areas, work with our Arab partners real time, right now, to make that happen. And secondly, I just have to tell you that the provocations by Russia need to be met with American strength. And if Russia chooses to be involved, and continue, I should say, to be involved in this barbaric attack on civilians in Aleppo, the United States of America should be prepared to use military force to strike military targets of the Assad regime, to prevent them from this humanitarian crisis that is taking place in Aleppo. There's a broad range of other things that we ought to do as well. We ought to deploy a missile defense shield to the Czech Republic and Poland, which Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama pulled back on out of not wanting to offend the Russians back in 2009. We've just got to have American strength on the world stage. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, the Russians and other countries in the world will know they're dealing with a strong American president.
Senator Hillary and I also agree that the establishment of a humanitarian zone in northern Syria with the provision of international human aid consistent with the UN Security Council resolution that was passed in February 2014 would be a very, very good idea. And Hillary also has the ability to stand up to Russia in a way that this ticket does not. Donald Trump again and again has praised Vladimir Putin, and it's clear that he has business dealings with Russian oligarchs who are very connected to Putin. The Trump campaign management team had to be fired a month or so ago because of those shadowy connections with pro-Putin forces. Governor Pence made the odd claim. He said, inarguably, Vladimir Putin is a better leader than President Obama. Vladimir Putin's run his economy into the ground. He persecutes LGBT folks and journalists. If you don't know the difference between dictatorship and leadership, then you got to go back to a 5th grade civics class. I tell you what offends me. Governor Pence just said that Donald Trump will rebuild the military. No, he won't. Donald Trump is avoiding paying taxes. The New York Times story, and we need to get this, but the New York Times story suggested that he probably didn't pay taxes for about 18 years starting in 1995. Those years included the years of 9/11. So get this. On 9/11, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's hometown was attacked by the worst terrorist attack in the history of the United States. Young men and women signed up to serve in the military to fight terrorism. Hillary Clinton went to Washington to get funds to rebuild her city and protect first responders, but Donald Trump was fighting a very different fight. It was a fight to avoid paying taxes so that he wouldn't support the fight against terror. He wouldn't support troops. He wouldn't support, this is important, Elaine, when a guy running for president will not support the troops, not support veterans, not support teachers, that's really important. And I said about Aleppo, we do agree. The notion is we have to create a humanitarian zone in northern Syria. It's very important.
Governor Pence, you had mentioned no-fly zone. Where would you propose setting up a safe zone specifically? How would you keep it safe?
Well, first and foremost, Donald Trump supports our troops. Donald Trump supports our veterans.
He won't pay taxes.
Donald Trump has paid all the taxes that he's... Do you not take deductions?
Gentlemen, this is about Syria. I'd like to ask the
honestly, Senator,
it is about our troops.
I understand why you want to change it. I understand why you want to change the subject. I understand why you want to change the subject. And let me be very clear on this Russian thing. The larger question here...
Do you think Donald Trump is smart to not pay taxes?
What we're dealing with is the... You know, there's an old proverb that says the Russian bear never dies, it just hibernates. And the truth of the matter is the weak and feckless foreign policy of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama has awakened an aggression in Russia that first appeared a few years ago with their move in Georgia, now their move into Crimea, now their move into the wider Middle East. And all the while, all we do is fold our arms and say we're not having talks anymore. To answer your question, we just need American strength. We need to marshal the resources of our allies in the region, and in the immediate, we need to act now to get people out of harm's way.
And exactly how would those safe zones work? How would they remain safe?
The safe zones would have to be, as the Senator said, there's already a framework for this that's been recognized by the international community. But the United States of America needs to be prepared to work with our allies in the region to create a route for safe passage, and then to protect people in those areas, including with a no-fly zone. But look, this is very tough stuff. I served on the Foreign Affairs Committee for a decade. I traveled in and out of that region for 10 years. I saw what the American soldier won in Operation Iraqi Freedom, and to see the weak and feckless leadership that Hillary Clinton was the architect of in the foreign policy of the Obama administration.
Let me come back.